My dear students, now we have to weigh out the advantages and disadvantages of pre-employment testing. Testing advantages: in simplest terms, pre-employment and employment tests are defined as procedures for determining job suitabilities. So these are the procedures which can determine that someone is suitable for that particular job in the organization and someone is not suitable for that particular job in the organization. So it has several advantages. First one, it enables employers to match an individual's abilities and potential with the requirement of a given job. So every job has a given requirement, and this testing can match the abilities of an individual with the job requirements. And if that matching would help you to identify the person for the further selection process, it would be a great advantage for someone. Number two, it identifies certain desirable and undesirable traits. So it is not only helpful to identify the desirable traits of the job, but it is also helpful to identify the undesirable traits in the individuals. So undesirable traits and the individual can be avoided for the further selection process because it is just a wastage of time and money in the selection process. Number three, it protects against charges of negligent hiring. So negligent hiring is a very big charge to the selectors in the organization. So employment testing is a protection. It is a protection to the selectors that we already test someone through a different procedures, through a different test, which we will mention in the future, that what are the different tests which can helpful to identify the right individual for the further selection process that provide the protection. And number four, it substitutes the reference checks. Sometimes pre-employment testing is so good that it would helpful and it would be served as a substitute for the reference checks for the selectors. And number five, it is inherently objective if validated. If employment tests are validative, it has inherently objective. It is very objective. Its objectivity is very high. But it is important that it would be more objective when it would be more validated. So if tests are more validated, it would be more objective. And number six, it distinguishes between otherwise similarly qualified applicants. So sometimes there are qualified applicants which are very similar to the qualified applicants. So it distinguishes between the candidates in a more accurate manner. In contrast, there are some disadvantages of employment testing as well. Sometimes some people consider employment testing as a substitute for effective interviewing skills. So it is not a case. It is not a case always that it is a substitute for interviewing skills or interviewing process. Interviewing process has its own importance, and employment testing cannot be served as a substitute for interviewing skills. Number two, it attempts to predict who will do well. It is just an attempt to prediction that who will do well. It is not always necessary that who is performing well in the employment testing will perform well in the organization when he would be really on the job. So testing and the real job are the two different things. It is a good predictor, but it is not always a good attempt to predict the success of the person through employment testing. And number three, it screens out qualified individuals who do not test well. Sometimes there are some individuals which are very qualified, very competent, but because of a certain factors, because of a certain reasons, they cannot perform well in the employment testing. And it doesn't mean that they would not perform well in the job as well. So you may eliminate such kind of highly qualified applicants because they didn't perform well through the pre-employment testing. And number four, it attempts to evaluate future job suitability. So yes, testing can help you to determine the performance of the person in the job in the future, but it is just an attempt to evaluate future job performance. And number five, it is a substitute for the on-job training in jobs requiring minimal learning. So sometimes it is served as a substitute for the on-job training, which is not true as well. And number six, it is viewed as a solving multiple employment problems. So this is not a case as well that the employment testing would help you to solve multiple employment problems. So in addition to the advantages, there are some disadvantages, and we need to avoid such kind of issues in the pre-employment testing.